Hello, friends. Did you know that just 100 years ago, in the territory of modern Japan, there lived women with completely tattooed lips? These amazing patterns were not just decoration, but a true sacred symbol that held the secrets of ancient culture. Welcome to a fascinating journey through the history of Ainu tattoos, one of the most mysterious and little-studied traditions in the world. If you're interested in unusual cultural practices and hidden pages of history, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss new episodes about the most amazing traditions of peoples around the world. And now, let's dive into the history of a people whose unique customs were almost completely erased from humanity's cultural memory. Imagine this. A girl has barely turned 5 years old when the first tattoos begin to appear around her mouth. This is not a modern tattoo using an electric machine, but a painful procedure where the skin is cut and soot from burned tree bark is rubbed into the wounds. This procedure stretches over years, becoming a kind of ritual of transition from childhood to adult life. By the time the girl reaches marriageable age, her lips are completely covered with blue-black patterns that make her ready for marriage and adult life. This is how the story of every woman of the Ainu people began, the indigenous population of northern Japan and Sakhalin. But who are the Ainu, and why did their culture find itself on the brink of extinction? The Ainu are an ancient people whose roots go back thousands of years. Unlike Mongoloid Japanese, the Ainu have Caucasoid features, lighter skin, wavy hair, and abundant facial hair in men. Their origin still causes disputes among scientists. Some researchers connect the Ainu with ancient inhabitants of Siberia. Others find similarities with Polynesians or even Caucasian peoples. This mystery of origin makes Ainu culture even more intriguing for modern researchers. Until the mid-19th century, the Ainu inhabited vast territories of the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido, the southern Kuril Islands, southern Sakhalin, and even separate areas of Kamchatka. They lived in harmony with nature, engaged in hunting, fishing, and gathering. In their worldview, every tree, every stone, every river possessed a soul. This animistic view of the world determined all aspects of their culture, including the tradition of tattoos. Female lip tattoos among the Ainu were called Sinui. This word can be translated as real work, and indeed the process of creating such tattoos was true art, passed down from mother to daughter for many generations. Sinui did not just decorate a woman, they served as protection from evil spirits, showed her social status and readiness for marriage. For the Ainu, these tattoos were sacred symbols connecting a woman with the world of spirits and ancestors. The process of applying tattoos was long and painful. It began when a girl turned 5 or 6 years old and continued until reaching marriageable age, usually until 13 to 16 years old. The girl's mother or grandmother made small cuts around the lips with a special knife with a sharpened end. Then soot obtained from burning the bark of certain trees was rubbed into the wounds. Over time, the design expanded and became more complex, gradually covering the entire area around the mouth and sometimes even extending to the forearms and hands. One can only imagine what pain young Ainu girls experienced during these procedures. However, they patiently endured all the suffering, believing that this pain was a necessary part of becoming a real woman. In some areas, there was a custom: if a girl cried or screamed from pain, the procedure was stopped and continued only after a year. It was believed that only a girl, strong in spirit, was worthy of wearing the full Sinui design. The tattoo patterns were not random. Every line, every curl had its meaning. Geometric motifs were most often used: spirals, diamonds, zigzags. These patterns symbolize connection with natural elements: water, fire, earth, and air. In addition, by the location and complexity of the patterns, one could determine which region a woman came from and which clan she belonged to. Thus, tattoos served as a kind of passport, telling about the origin and status of their bearer. Interestingly, only Ainu women wore such expressive facial tattoos. Men were limited to small marks on their hands or symbolic tattoos on their chest. This is connected with the special role of women in Ainu society. Despite the fact that it was considered patriarchal, women enjoyed great respect and had significant power in deciding household matters. They were keepers of the hearth, traditions, and spiritual practices. Tattoos emphasized this spatial role and served as a sign of maturity and wisdom. There was a belief that a woman without tattoos could not enter the world of ancestors after death. Spirits would not recognize her and would not accept her into their realm. Therefore, even in old age, Ainu women were proud of their sinui and carefully maintained their brightness, periodically renewing the patterns. For them, these tattoos were not just decoration, but an integral part of identity, connecting them with ancestors and future generations. However, with the arrival of the Japanese in Ainu territories, this ancient tradition began to gradually disappear. The colonization of Hokkaido, which actively began in the 18th century and intensified after the Meiji Restoration in 1868, led to catastrophic consequences for Ainu culture. The new Japanese government pursued a policy of assimilation, seeking to turn the Ainu into ordinary Japanese citizens. Many traditional practices were banned, including lip tattoos. In 1871, the Japanese government officially banned the practice of tattooing among the Ainu, declaring it a barbaric custom. Women with tattoos found it difficult to find work in Japanese companies. Their children were discriminated against in schools. Gradually, the tradition began to fade, as young girls, striving to integrate into Japanese society, refused the painful procedure. By the beginning of the 20th century, full sinui could only be seen on elderly women. The tragedy of the situation was compounded by the fact that along with the disappearance of tattoos, an important part of Ainu cultural identity was also disappearing. After all, sinui were not just drawings on skin, they contained a whole complex of beliefs, rituals, and social practices. With each elderly woman with tattooed lips who passed away, a piece of ancient wisdom was lost that could never be restored. By the mid-20th century, the number of Ainu with traditional tattoos had decreased to several dozen elderly women. The last woman with a full traditional sinui design died in 1998. With her passing, a living tradition spanning thousands of years ended. It seemed that the art of sinui was forever lost and would remain only in museum photographs and ethnographic descriptions. However, in recent decades, we have observed an amazing process of Ainu culture revival. After many years of struggle for recognition, in 2009, the Japanese government officially recognized the Ainu as an indigenous people of Japan. This opened new opportunities for preserving and developing their cultural heritage. The younger generation of Ainu began to show interest in their roots, including the tradition of tattoos. Of course, today no one makes real sinui using cuts and soot. This painful practice remains in the past. However, many modern Ainu and even Japanese without Ainu roots have begun using traditional patterns in contemporary tattoos made with professional equipment. Some artists create temporary tattoos using henna or special paints to honor the memory of their ancestors and draw attention to their culture. Of particular interest is the phenomenon of cultural reappropriation, the process when representatives of a culture reclaim traditions that were taken from them. Young Ainu activists use sinui images in contemporary art, fashion, and design, reinterpreting the ancient tradition in the context of modernity. They create jewelry with traditional patterns, paint pictures inspired by sinui, and even develop clothing lines with prints imitating these unique tattoos. One of the most interesting aspects of the modern revival of tradition is its feminist reinterpretation. Ainu female researchers note that sinui, despite the painfulness of the procedure, gave women special status in society and were a form of expressing female solidarity and continuity. Today, these aspects of tradition acquire new meaning in the context of the struggle for women's rights and indigenous peoples' rights. In 2015, a major Ainu culture museum opened in Hokkaido, featuring an extensive exhibition dedicated to the sinui tradition. Visitors can see ancient tattooing instruments, photographs of women with traditional designs, and even participate in workshops on creating temporary tattoos with Ainu patterns. This helps preserve the memory of the tradition and pass it on to future generations. Particularly important is documenting the memories of the last bearers of the tradition. In recent years, dozens of interviews have been recorded with elderly Ainu women who still remember their grandmothers and mothers with sinui tattoos. These oral histories are of enormous value to researchers and help restore details of rituals and beliefs associated with the tattoo tradition. When my grandmother smiled, the lines around her lips formed an amazing pattern resembling butterfly wings, recalls one of the informants. She told me that these lines protect her words from evil spirits and allow her to speak only the truth. I regret that I could not get the same tattoos. They were part of our feminine power. Modern research shows that the tradition of lip tattoos existed not only among the Ainu, but also among many other peoples of the circumpolar region, Chukchi, Eskimos, Aleuts. This suggests that the roots of this tradition go back to deep antiquity, possibly to the time of the initial settlement of the northern regions of Eurasia and America. Comparative study of patterns and tattooing techniques among different peoples helps better understand migration processes and cultural connections between ancient civilizations. Interestingly, in some regions of the world, similar traditions have survived to this day. For example, among Berber tribes of North Africa, women still apply tattoos to their faces and hands using a technique very similar to that used by the Ainu. In Myanmar, women of the Chin tribe also traditionally tattooed their faces, although this practice is also on the brink of extinction due to modernization and globalization. What do Sinui mean for modern Ainu? For many, it is a symbol of national identity revival, a reminder of the strength and resilience of their ancestors. At the same time, it is a reminder of the tragic experience of colonization and cultural genocide that their people went through. By reinterpreting the Sinui tradition, modern Ainu create a new narrative about their culture, a narrative that has room for both respect for traditions and a critical view of the past. Contemporary artists of Ainu origin create stunning works inspired by the Sinui tradition. They use tattoo motifs in painting, graphics, and digital art. These works do not simply reproduce ancient patterns, they reinterpret them in the context of modernity, creating a bridge between past and future. Such creative reinterpretation helps preserve the spirit of tradition, even if its literal reproduction is no longer possible. The history of Sinui teaches us an important lesson. Cultural traditions are alive as long as they are remembered and as long as they find response in people's hearts. Even if physically the tradition has been interrupted, its spiritual essence can be preserved and reinterpreted by new generations. In this sense, Sinui continue to live in the research of scientists, in the creativity of artists, in the self-consciousness of modern Ainu. The study of the Sinui tradition also raises important questions about cultural appropriation and respect for indigenous peoples' heritage. Where is the line between respectful interest in another culture and its exploitation? How can we study and appreciate the traditions of other peoples without turning them into exotic commodities? These questions are especially relevant today, when globalization makes cultural exchange more intensive, but at the same time creates the risk of superficial perception of traditions torn from context. So we have come to the end of our journey into the world of Ainu tattoos. We have seen how an ancient tradition spanning thousands of years was almost completely destroyed as a result of colonization and assimilation. But we have also seen how the memory of it is preserved and transformed in the modern world. The story of Sinui is a story of resilience, adaptation, and revival, a story about how cultural memory can survive even the harshest trials. What do you think about this amazing tradition? Do you believe that ancient practices like Sinui should be preserved in their original form, or should they evolve along with society? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss new episodes about the most unusual cultural practices from around the world. And in the next episode, we will travel to another corner of the planet where we will discover an equally amazing tradition that challenges our ideas about beauty and identity. Until we meet again, friends,